Hey there YouTube, I am Wheelchair21 and on today's rolling review we are looking at the Bandai Tamashii Nations S.H.MonsterArts Godzilla 1964, the Emergence version, not virgin, version, which was a Bandai Collector Shop exclusive item in Japan in 2015. However, it was distributed in North America via Bluefin Tamashii, and honestly right now it's going up in price in North America because its release is becoming more and more limited at stores and sellers and distributors, and whereas in Japan, even though it was an exclusive, it actually is staying close to almost Japanese retail, where this is inflating in the North American market. But I was able to snag it at Power Morphicon for less than both the American and Japanese retail. So with this box art, it's pretty cool and pretty standard to the P Bandai Monster Arts boxes, where we don't get to see actually inside. There is no window, and we just see the actual item flush to the actual front of the box. And on the back, we see some promotional art, which even shows to go as far as how the actual sculptors and designers had to accurately pose the actual figure to get it to recreate this promotional art from the actual Mothra versus Godzilla from 1964. Alright, and here we have the MosuGoji monster art out of the box. I like to call it the MosuGoji mostly because it is the Mothra versus Godzilla design from 1964, where this version, as the Emergence version, goes straight to when Godzilla erupts out of the harbor beachside area where he was washed ashore due to a typhoon and covered in debris, and has a lot of a dirty, grimy grain to his overall design, where I gotta say, it really, really looks amazing at how well they were able to airbrush and make the design look and work, where he had the sand and dirt actually ingrained in the suit and skin. It gave like that realistic environmental like grind about it, due to the fact that for a majority of the film it kind of stayed stuck to the suit, and it took them quite a while to clean the suit and make it look base color again, of being the charcoal like gray, rather than having the weird brownish and yellowy mucky look from being covered in dirt. Now, the overall articulation is practically the same as the original issue of the figure. However, it seems that when they repurposed and remade the figure, it does have a bit of mold degradation, where joints are a little bit looser in the tail as well as in the hips. But I did learn and do the research that some of the figures, even in the original waves, did have this issue of too loose of a tail and too loose of a hips, to the possibility that they were popping off the peg or toes were popping off the joint. But this release doesn't seem to have too many of those issues that I've seen in other people's reviews. I'm not really a fan of how the hip design is, because it seems to almost look like it could fracture the lower abdomen, just because of how it's like an egg shape or a teardrop, to widen the leg movements and mimic certain poses that Nakajima did for Godzilla in the film itself. But the arms seem pretty mobile and maneuverable. I do wish there were a bit of additional hands to recreate some of the various scenes where Godzilla was fighting Mothra, because they weren't always just open. He did have a little bit of a clenchness to it, to bat and paw at Mothra when it came down upon him. In addition, the joints for the neck and pectoral area seem to be overly tight as usual, which don't allow a person to fully try to straighten out the upper torso and neck to allow it to look a little bit more like it did in the film, as well as the neck itself is a little too tight, where it can't fully arc the mid-center here of the coil to allow you to fully bend and pose the creature. For the overall head and face design, I have noticed that there are quite a few details in the face that really look stellar to recreate the overall Godzilla design for the MosuGoji suit. It does have a few civil liberties of sculpting and molding, where they tried to, I think, also add in the part where the suit was broken and damaged in the jawline and up to the right eye, where the right eye is a little bit more glossier and dead, and the jaw is a little bit weird and has a, kind of a crook to it. Now, I would say, though, that they kind of maybe mixed in the, the Sandai Kaiju design a little bit into this, and I would expect them to most likely retool this and reissue it one day as that form, as well as slightly use the mold to create the following suit that was seen in Godzilla versus the Sea Monster within the following year or two after Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster was released. Anyways, so I do think that there is some issues with the figure, but it's kind of expected with how MonsterArts has been, especially when you look back 3 years ago with the style and design that they were working off of, especially when the 64 mold was one of the earlier designs, and then this was a slight reissue and retool because the fans desperately wanted it. Now, if people were watching the actual profile of the box or know anything about it, this version also does come with its Tamashii Stage, which does have a little warning label that says, Godzilla is the character trademark of Toho Company, yada yada yada, all rights reserved. And it's based on I think, Act 3 or 4 version of a stage. And then you have your very old school Showa-esque recreation of the Thermonuclear Blast, which honestly uses a lot of white and only has a few hues of sky blue. And it looks kind of like a giant icicle rather than the blast. Like, there are some liberties of that, the fact that the early Showa blasts don't all look like the concentrated beam in the later films does help for this to have some difference and not being too accurate whatsoever. But overall, for having the actual blast effect, it's a nice little added bonus. Having the actual grainy, dirty effect to the suit is really nice, and really is something I've always actually wanted. I've always wanted the 64 suit in this specific and particular color, texture, and design, and I'm glad I finally got it. When NECA eventually does this version, I'll probably buy that version too, just because I'm one of those weird, Godzilla fans where if it's a design of the suit that I really like, I tend to buy quite a few of those figures, as long as they're articulated. So overall, if you haven't gotten this figure yet, go out and get it while supplies still last, but don't go over probably 80 to 90 bucks. Once you're in the $100 range, you're overpaying for this figure, immensely. I was able to get this, like I said, below US retail and Japanese premium prices, so that would have been around $40 to $60 that I got mine at Power Morphicon. So if you like Godzilla versus Mothra, or Mothra versus Godzilla 1964, and you like this specific monster art, please leave a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel. Yes, Wheelchair21, as well as follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, and check out HeroClub.com.